I am super excited for today's episode. It is our first collab. We actually got to sit down with another podcast, which is really exciting. But most importantly, it's actually your son, Donovan, and his friend, Handre, that host the podcast DLO DRE. So how was it interviewing your son?
It was an incredible amount of fun. And there's a lot of pride in just being proud of both of those boys and what they're doing. They're both introverts, which we'll get into in the episode. And they do a podcast and they're exploring what they want to do with their lives and the businesses. And this is one of their big first steps. So as a father, it was enjoyable. As a podcast host, they did incredible. So I'm looking forward to everybody listening into this episode.
Me too. I thought going into it, I might have been a little outside of my depth with basketball, which is definitely a theme, but there's so many good things about business and life and, getting older and developing. And so it was a really, really good conversation. I'm really excited for both of our listeners to listen in. Welcome to Tell Us Your Story, the podcast that tells the diverse stories of businesses, leaders, and influencers throughout Northern California. Our mission is to ignite inspiration, foster education, and bring our community together. Join us as we unravel the path to achievement, discovering how these remarkable businesses and leaders navigated obstacles, conquered hardships, and transformed failures into success.
In today's episode, we sit down with Donovan and Handre of DLO DRE podcast. This was a really fun episode for me, sitting back and listening into these two young men and their journey. And there's three key areas that you want to tune in for. The first one is about their basketball career, their experience at Rocklin High School, how they came together, their successes and their failures, and how they dealt with that. The second is going to be how they took their experiences as athletes and they applied them to their everyday disciplines and what that means to them and how they can pass that on to others. And then three, we're going to talk about how they're building a business and a brand, and they're really taking a risk at the young age of 22 to go out on their own and make something happen. So I look forward to them listening to this podcast in years to come, and this really being the genesis for their journey to success. So sit back, listen in, and enjoy this episode of Tell Us Your Story. Donovan, where did you grow up?
Natomas, Sacramento, until 7th grade. Came to Rocklin and then finished out middle school and high school here. So that's where I grew up, in Natomas.
And where are you going to school now?
University of Reno, Nevada. I'll be done in May.
How old are you?
22.
Oh, I'm just drilling in with questions.
Yeah. And what are you studying?
I'm studying a major in communications and a minor in business.
And do you have any idea of what you want? You're getting dad questions.
I have a little bit of idea. I graduate soon, so I've been thinking about it more. I either want to get into marketing or sales, and then I want to have side gigs. So one main job and then like one or two things that I can really focus on and work on the outside.
Good. And Handre, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bloemfontein, South Africa, or at least that was where I was born. Lived there for 8 years. So in 2009, we moved here from South Africa to Roseville initially. Stayed there until high school, which would have been 2016, and then moved over to Rocklin, and the rest is history. Been here since. So, yeah.
And what are you doing now? Are you going to school or are you working on a business?
Yeah, mainly business. That's the biggest thing. I've had my struggles with school, to say the least, and I've also personally just seen more success in the real world when it comes to building businesses and stuff like that. So right now it's just the personal training stuff is the main one, and then also building more of an online presence as well for me. So
I love
no school right now, no education, formal school right now. Let's put it that way. So
I saw your business page, and so we have questions about that. But are you 22 as well?
Yeah, 22.
Close?
Yeah.
Very nice.
So both of you went through pretty big moves when you were in. Donovan was in 6th grade.
Yep.
And then 9 years old. You must have been about 5th, 6th grade when you moved from South Africa.
I think
So it's like for
third, fourth.
I think I was just going into second. I'm pretty sure.
So
yeah, I was
younger,
pretty early.
but still a pretty big move. So big move moving from one town to the next, all new friends, but then moving from another country. Mm-hmm. So which one do you guys think was more difficult?
Country for sure. Yeah. I would guess country.
I would assume.
Yeah.
What challenges did you face? Do you remember?
The biggest one was probably like the cultural side of things. You know, coming from South Africa, I think I was young enough, I would say, but more so seeing the difficulties of my mom and my sisters. Those are probably, they faced more just because they had more, I guess, experience there, you know. I think I was old enough to really understand, you know, the differences. But the cultural ones, and like one of the bigger ones is definitely like it's very conservative over there. It's very traditional, you know. There's not a lot of, you know, mix of things over there. Everything, you know, I think like the statistic is like 80-90% of people are religious, you know, Christian, mostly. And over here, obviously California, it's completely different from that. So that was probably the biggest thing. It's just the kind of going from you know, where values-based living is a standard, you know, to here where it's just kind of like, you know, it is what you find. Everyone has their own thing, their own beliefs and everything like that. So
what was the story with move? So your family just decided to move, or?
No, so it actually began with my dad. My dad passed away in 2007, and then that led to, well, at the time, so that's 2007, I was 5 turning 6, and my 2 sisters were 10 and 12, I believe. And then it was my mom, and so we were a single parent household, right? And in South Africa, it's not the safest, right? And so that was one component of it. And then the other component was she met a guy here that lived here. And so we actually came here with him. So our 2 destinations was either this or Australia. So, and I'm glad we ended up here.
Yeah.
Although Australia would have been pretty cool, but I think, I'm happy. So
that's a big move. Yeah, that's a big move. So you said your sisters were a little bit older, so I'm sure school and things like that. So what was, you said some of those struggles, just any examples of?
Like I was kind of saying, the biggest one is just like the values was probably the biggest difference, you know, just because I know it was, fortunately at that time, it was Adventure before it was Bayside. They had their own church there, and so they got plugged into a really, really good church and made most of their friends there. But I mean, I think the typical high school struggles that most people go through were kind of elevated or exaggerated just because of the value differences, you know. And I mean, they all went to public schools, went to a public school too, and so there's a lot of you can call them temptations, so to speak, you know. So a lot of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting as we get into this because then you become really good friends with Donovan. And so let's talk about your move a little bit. So you came in at 6th grade. What were some of the challenges that you faced? Do you remember those challenges?
Honestly, there wasn't a lot of challenges coming to a new school because as somebody who was, my outfits were very loud and I wore a different pair of shoes every single day. And that kind of just, I don't know, people attached to that. It was something new. I think everyone in Rocklin is just used to seeing the same faces, the same people. So just switching it up, and someone who's a little creative, I would say, came in. People got attached to it. So
he was the cool kid. What he's saying. We got you.
So I'll have some humility here. I'm not the cool one in the family. So where did you get the creativity from?
Definitely my brother and my mom. My mom's very creative. She's very colorful, red hair. And then Johnny has a bunch of swag, and he would just rock it. And he was very fashionable too. And we were big in basketball and basketball shoes, and shoes are loud. So I just wore the colorful ones. It wasn't to say anything. I just liked it.
And so just because I have some of the history, any troubles transitioning into the school and academically?
Well, academically, I wasn't really a big scholar at that age. I just really didn't focus on it. Necessarily, middle school grades don't matter, so there wasn't any struggle. I could have had a 4.0 or I could have had a 2.0. Nothing would have changed, so no.
When you were going through middle school, you said the effort, the outcome is going to be the same regardless of the effort, whether I get a 2.0 or 4.0. So you decide, I don't need to put in maximum effort. It's going to be the same. So when you think about life and the decisions you make now, do you go about that the same way? You look at it and say, what's my return on my investment and how much effort do I need to put in?
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on the situation for sure, but I'm getting my degree now and I don't plan to go to grad school. So all I need is C's, and C's get degrees. So that's what I'm rocking with right now.
Yeah, hopefully your future employer.
Listen to this one. No, hopefully your future employer's yourself. It sounds like that's going to be
That's true.
The thing. So what about your role models? So I always loved it's your son, so I'm absolutely going for it. I need to hear about your, what was your household like? Your parenting, was it strict?
It was strict, but it was loose. I was the baby in the house, so the third child. I think they learned from my other 2 siblings, and I also learned from them too, the mistakes they made and the good things that they did. So I knew how to be smart and sneaky, but smart. So it was strict. Both my parents came from military background, so I had things I needed to get done. But as long as I get my stuff done and I wasn't getting into trouble, I was fine.
Yeah. What about yours?
Yeah.
Mom and
it was interesting, obviously, because growing up in a single parent household, my mom had to be kind of both the father and mother role, and which isn't ideal, of course, and so there's some things there, but I would say probably my sisters probably played the biggest impact there, just because they very much so raised me as well. I look back at it and I definitely had 3 moms, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
and it goes back to the same thing that Donovan was saying. It's like I am the baby too. I think I'm 5 and 7 years younger than them, so they definitely played a really big role there. And then outside of like the familial role models, though, like I think probably the biggest role models I had in my life were definitely like coaches, that we grew up with. So
in a single family household, did you end up taking on the male role a lot of times? And did you know that at the time?
I didn't think about it. No, I wasn't aware of it. That's for sure. I think probably the biggest things, because I mean, that's a really big part of kind of, I look back at it and there's like a really big part of my story in terms of looking for, that father-like figure, in my life. And that has created a lot of, because that was a need that was gone pretty early, So that has led to a lot of, vulnerability when it comes to especially older, men in my life. And fortunately, I've had a lot of really, really good role models. And unfortunately, there have been a few that have also not been the greatest. So, but I think throughout it all, I've learned how to, fill that role, but realistically, I think my mom had to, because I was a little boy, I didn't really know what it was. So my mom had to really kind of step in, so.
And for those that don't know, you're 6'7".
Yeah.
And so since I've known you, you've been tall. So was there always, when people engaged with you, interacted with you, did they think you were older than you were possibly? And did you feel that ever? I always thought, because you're so tall.
Yeah. I think to a certain degree, sometimes, but I always had a baby face. So, so it wasn't, so it was always like, you're really freakishly tall, but you look young, so it's a kind of weird combination there. That, and then I was also really skinny, so I wasn't really developed, I mean, you guys know this, until probably in high school when I really started to develop, my frame, so to speak. But so I always looked like a kid up until high school, probably. So
what age did you 2 meet? How old were you guys when you 2 met?
It had to have been around 7th grade, 14 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
13, 14. So you guys end up going, we'll talk about your Rocklin basketball career and what you guys did here. And, big statement for both of you as you went through and with the program. Obviously, I'm dad, so you're getting some dad goggles here. And I'm very much aware of that, but you guys had storied, careers as you went through it. But I want to start with how you guys fell in love with basketball and where it started, and then how it came together. So when did you fall in love with basketball, and was it going to be your main sport?
I think it was after I played baseball and football and basketball. I played all 3 of them. And then once we moved here, I didn't have any friends here really because it's a new town. So I started going to the local Cal Fit and just ran and played for hours. And it was helpful because Johnny came with me too. So we would just meet new people and play. And it was fun. That was the first time I really had fun just playing. It wasn't, you don't play for anything. You just play for Cal Fit. There's nothing, you don't get no trophy or anything.
For the next game, stay
on the court. So I think that was the time. Started building more relationships and friends that way.
Mm-hmm. And then what about you, Handre?
So when we moved here, being my whole family's very athletic. My dad was very, very athletic. He was a pretty successful track athlete in Africa, actually, on the national level, which is pretty cool. But when we moved here, I was already taller than most people, and my mom was looking for a place to put that energy towards. And so we started Hot Shots, actually, in 2010. So it was literally a year after we left. And AP was actually on that team. So I've been playing with him for a long, long time. So I really just started playing it. And I think it was also, there was a need for a common similarity between me and the people my age that we can kind of bond over. because we'd moved here from South Africa, and there was cultural differences. There was not a lot of things that I can really relate to people with. Like even to this day, there are some things like Thanksgiving, for example, that I didn't grow up with Thanksgiving. So it's a little bit different for me. But that ended up being the place where I made my friends. So I think that was what really got me into it. And then there's a whole nother reason as to why I actually continued to play it. But that's what really first helped me fall in love with it, which is the community aspect.
And what was the other reason?
Yeah.
Tell the
I was like, do we ask now or do we wait?
Yeah. So the other reason was just learning the game. I think that once you get good at something, you start to get better at something. It makes it more fun, and it makes it, you want to get better at it even more, So I think as I got to know the game better and I started to could see some progress, it was like kind of like that dopamine hit, and I wanted more of that. So, and basketball just happened to be the one that I landed in. So, and I was tall already, so I had some advantages there as well. So, yeah.
And so when did you guys connect? Did you guys first connect through AAU and one of those, or did you play in the gym and meet each other? Or do you remember?
Believe in middle school we played against each other, and I didn't know anything about him, but he was one of their best players, and he was super tall, and it was competition. We wanted to win, so we wanted to beat them. And then I started playing AAU at YBA, and he was playing there before, and I came in new. No one knew my skills, so I was playing. I was on the lower team, and he was on the higher team. So then just played with them, got better, and then time went by. I eventually moved up, and then we started playing on the same team, and that's where we got really close.
And was it just over basketball that you guys bonded? So for those, and you played volleyball, Natasha, so I know that you traveled, you did the whole thing as well. So there's the travel, there's the time you're hanging out, there's days where you're sitting, 4 or 5 hours in between games, and you're just sitting in the gym. What were you guys bonding over? What was that experience like?
Pretty much anything. You're just in the same place as somebody else. You guys just find stuff to talk about. You see someone walk by, like, hey, look at those shoes, or just simple things. Honestly, just make conversation and talk, and then you can tell the vibe from somebody when you talk to them. You guys are cool. You get along. And it's pretty much how it happened.
And yeah, so I try to tell any parent that I can, right. So put your kid into something, whether it's basketball, dance, baseball, whatever it is, because these type of bonds, that's where your formative years, you're starting to figure out what you love and what you like. And I'm lucky enough to look back on your guys' experience, and I can see when you guys talk about it, the memory starts to trigger emotions and things that you guys remember. So when you guys started playing together, was it instant, or did it take some time to build the chemistry?
To me, it felt instant. We were both good at basketball, and when you're good together, he's a center, I'm a guard, so I'd pass to him. He's taller. He'd look for me, he'd pass back to me, and you play on the court, you get that chemistry, and you just run with it, and it feels good, and you trust that person once they start playing good with you. And
how about you, Handre?
Oh yeah, I'd agree. I think to answer the previous question as well, that's probably where I think the bond happened the most, which is for love for the game, and challenging each other to grow on the court too. And I think that even though it might not be ideal, I think I look back on it, and the people that I related with the most were the ones that were, that I was playing with the most, and that we were successful together, so the ones that were, doing better, so to speak, and that really challenged each other and that wanted to win, I think those are the guys that I definitely clung to, because I also wanted to win. I'm an athlete, and a competitive athlete, it can be a little irritating if someone doesn't want to win. They're just out there goofing off, and, for sure this guy wasn't goofing off on the court, he wanted to win. So I think I definitely clung to those people. And so I think he came in with that need of wanting to win, and that probably immediately something we bonded over, and I think it happened pretty instantly once we realized that fact, at least, so.
Well, I'm going to ask all three of you a question since you played as well. So played volleyball. So there's different levels in every sport. Yeah. So it doesn't matter what sport you go into. So some will say, you have D1, D2, D3. You have different levels of AAU. You have national champions. Donovan traveled on a team for a while that, went across the country. You play competitive sports, but you find different success and you talk about winning, and it's at different levels. So looking back, does it matter what level you're at? Is it the experience? Is it the journey? Would have made a difference if you would have played, in a national championship in 5th grade versus just having fun with your friends. Does it make a difference? I have my opinion as a dad now looking back, but I'll start with you, Natasha.
With me, I think, well, mine's a little bit different too, and I will ask you too about this in a minute, if, basketball's the dream. I was very competitive, and I played, the high school, the rec and all that stuff, and then competitive outside of high school. But I also wasn't going to be a pro volleyball player. Mm-hmm. So, I was putting in the work to be the best I could at the time, but it wasn't probably wasn't the same type of dream that you guys had. And so I do think it makes a difference, just because as you're coming up, I mean, everything's a step, right? You have to play the rec, and then you play the competitive, and then, whatever it is. So I think in the moment, I'm sure people are enjoying it, but I mean, I'd have to believe that the NBA might feel a little bit better than, 5th grade World Series or whatever, which is baseball. I know, not basketball. I was just throwing out something. So anyway, I think it's different. I think also you're talking about the learning, the love for the game. It's deeper as you get better and get more serious. And so I feel like the outcome is also heavier. You're just putting in the work, and to see that. So, I think it's different for everyone.
How about you two?
I think we talked about this not too long ago, about how, it's not fun when you're just destroying people, when you're on the court, you just run people every single time, I think we were talking about whether you wanted to come play at Rocklin, which was just kind of more a better league, or go play at a D5 high school where he could average 50 a game, and he said that he'd rather come to Rocklin and actually be competitive and even lose sometimes, and have that bond is what we talked about. And so I think that it's really a combination of both, because I would even say that the love of the game obviously is the thing that's the most important, because that's what fuels you, but at the same time, I feel like there needs to be challenge, and challenge only comes when you get to the more competitive leagues and stuff, and when you're actually trying to win, when there's cost or risk associated with it, so I think there has to be a balance between the two. So
mine are just about the people.
Go ahead.
Maybe I'll ask you about, so what was the dream? Was it you just wanted to play with your friends, you're having a good time? I know you are competitive, but was, playing in college and, NBA, was that was basketball the dream, or was it just something that you really enjoyed and yes, you were going to be competitive? What was it for you two?
It was the dream for me. I did not like school, so I thought if I had to do anything, it had to be through basketball. It was my way to get school paid for, and I didn't want to go to school and just do schoolwork. I wanted to go for a reason. And then it looked so fun too, seeing Division I schools with all the fans and all that. So it was my dream. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it definitely is a dream. I mean, I could even look back at Sierra a couple of years ago, and I feel like that's kind of how it is though in the basketball world. It's you kind of have to have that no plan B attitude, where it's you're either going to go all the way or you're not, So that's definitely what I had. And I think that it definitely was a dream to play NBA, or just professional in general, just to do something that you love and make money while doing it. I think it sounds like a pretty good gig to me.
Yeah,
so,
we're going to come back to it, because the dream, it comes to an end for everybody. Whether you make it and it comes to an end, or you make the decision not to.
Yeah.
So as you guys were going into your high school and you guys started playing freshman ball together, I can't remember. Did you go to the varsity team? Either one of you go up freshman year? Handre, you did?
I didn't go varsity. I went JV.
You went JV? Yeah. And so you guys separated. How did were you guys good with that? Because now you're playing with a different group of kids, Handre is.
Yeah.
I liked it a little bit because it was nice when we didn't see each other that much. So when we saw each other, it meant more. How you doing, bro? And you just talk about it. It's how's it going? It just felt different instead of seeing somebody every single day, I feel like.
You went up to varsity?
He went up to JV and I was on freshman.
You did. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And how about you? So now you're with a new group of kids. So you're not with the ones you were playing with. Was it comfortable for you, or was it uncomfortable?
Oh, definitely uncomfortable. But I would say, to his point, I had just moved from Roseville, to Rocklin. I had literally zero friends outside of the basketball guys, And I think looking back, off the court, that was probably the year that D and I's relationship grew the most off the court, because he was the only friend I had there, what I mean? And we still connected through basketball and through shoes and through everything else too, so. But I would definitely say it's a challenge, and I think that one of the things I did when I got there was I wanted to get to the highest level possible, because I wanted to as something that would challenge me, if I was able to do it, then I wanted to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I went for I wanted to be on varsity because Darius played on varsity, and I was I want to be on varsity, but I shot for the moon, landed on the star, so to speak, that first year at least,
So as you guys go into your sophomore year, and we'll go into your junior year. You start sophomore, junior year. Starting to play with the same group of guys. You know where it's going. I remember that senior team, which is a good senior team. Do you guys know you have, or do you think you have a special team that can do something?
For sure. It was state or nothing. There was, in my mind, we were going to win section and state.
Absolutely.
Should have stayed D2, but they wanted to switch it on us the last year for some reason. Yeah. But no, that was the end goal all the time. We had a great point guard. We had everything we had pretty much everything you need. We had a wing that can defend. You had the center, really good. You have a point guard that's really good, and then you have a shooting guard. We had other people who filled the spots too that were good, but we were beating teams.
And we were talking about it freshman year too. You know what I mean? From the moment that we all kind of came together, we were planning on being there our varsity year. It was.
You think you would have ever thought you weren't going to, you know, like when you're like, there's no way, it's like you're not going to root against yourself. Do you think you would have realistically been like, yeah, probably not a state team, or you just knew everybody was that good?
It's hard because as much work as you can put in, genetics is very important in basketball, I'd say. I know they say hard work beats talent and all that, but I mean, we're playing against the team that we lost to is just a super freaky athletic, and it's a lot better than us. So we always thought we could compete, and we did compete. But yeah, they were just good.
So when you guys, let's talk about the Rocklin program. So Steve Taylor is the coach, and asked him to be on this program, and love to talk to him as well. And so it's a storied program. Was it difficult within that program for you guys? Was he a challenging coach for you, or what was it like working under that program?
Oh yeah, it was tough, I think, but I think that's the standard that Rocklin sets, even going back there now, because I'm a coach there now, I was speaking to a few players. It's the same thing. It has a reputation for producing good, high quality character men, it's not just players. I think that Coach Taylor sets the tone he has whole rules, and the first rule is literally just to be on time, and if you're not on time, it's a serious problem, there's a lot of punishment consequences that comes from just that alone, and then on top of that, on time is 15 minutes early for him. So, so the standard is pretty high, to put it simply. It is high. And I think he does a good job too of having grace every now and then, when you do kind of mess up, but at the same time, he wants there to be a winning atmosphere and a winning mentality, and he doesn't really settle for anything less than that. So
I love that.
Yeah, if you do your job and you win and everything's going good, it's always fun when you win.
Oh yeah.
So our senior year, we were winning, and you could tell on his face. Everyone was happy, everyone was having a good time. So yeah, it was fun then.
Yeah, so you guys are smiling. So when you look back on it, even though it was hard and you guys were grinding, I remember because going to practice, the hours that you guys put in, and then the extra in the gym and the diets and everything that went along with it. Was it worth it when you look back? Was it like that effort that you put into that experience?
It was definitely worth it. I feel like I can always go back and feel the same way I did. I mean, we left, both of us, Hall of Fame. We left our mark on that school, and it's exciting. If I ever have kids, I can always say, hey, this is the school that I'm a Hall of Fame player at. We won the first league. We tied league for the first time in 10 years, so co-win 10 years. So that feels good to go back and see that. It's in the stadium somewhere. So
You think you gave it your all? Like, could you have done more, do you think?
I definitely could have more. I think it took me being run into the ground with injuries in order to take it seriously, which you guys know this both, right? So bringing it back to the sophomore, junior year, I didn't play pretty much for a solid 20 months, I think, so 2.5 years from injuries. And so it took that in order for me to realize the fact that I needed to put more into it if I wanted to get something out of it, And I think that was truly something, that time, or at least that adversity, really something that sculpted, the character for what would be a really good senior year. And then from that as well, something that I carried forward, so.
That's really. I actually did see it when I was stalking your social about getting hurt, and then I was watching your highlight reel. So I know a little bit about what you're talking about. What about you? You think you could have done more?
I think I could have done more. Yeah, I feel like I did a lot, but it's just the knowledge. I feel like I should have studied more on what to actually do, because I was putting the work in, and it's still the right work, but there's little things, like the little steps I could have done that I think would have made me just a little bit better, and that could have made a big difference. So yeah.
And what about the relationships that you guys had with all of those players? Like, I know most of those boys. How those relationships stand to this day? Do you guys get together and you guys reminisce, remember on the memories? It's still good friends?
Yeah, I think I can call on anybody that I played with, and we could talk for an hour, and it'd be great. Talk about anything. If I ever need anything, I definitely could reach out to all my old teammates. And we still talk. Snapchat a lot. We don't really call, but we still have to keep in touch.
Yeah, I'd say every now and then with most of them, occasionally. But obviously D's the main one, I would say, from that group of guys. So, but of course, a big factor too is the fact that like everyone else. I mean, I think we're the only two that's left in this area. Maybe Darius is. Well, he's in the Bay Area,
He's in the Bay now.
Pretty much everyone else is just dispersed. So me and him are the only two that's really closer.
So now that you're coach on the freshman team, assistant coach, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are there talks about bringing back the old crew and running against the seniors and running on the ground, or they beat you guys?
That's just not fair.
They got a pretty good
Which
spot.
way is not fair for them or for you?
We would run them.
In a loving way.
I
In a
hope they're
loving way.
listening.
So I want to talk real quick. So both of you ended up, after you finished basketball, they put you into the Rocklin Hall of Fame, which is, a big deal for you guys. So how did you guys feel about it? Did you know it was happening? How did you feel about it?
I was surprised. Honestly, didn't really know it was a thing. I thought there was like the one MVP of all the sports, and it was the one person that they do because they put that in the stadium. I never even knew Hall of Fame was an option. So besides that, the main goal was to win. And by putting work in and trying to win, it happened. And he called us one day and was like, hey, you made Hall of Fame. And it felt good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was a weird time just because that was literally when COVID hit, So I remember like we didn't even have our awards ceremony or any of that, which was what we were supposed to do, I remember for me personally, I moved on after we lost. I was like, okay, that dream of getting state died, So I was kind of just like a little butthurt from that still, and then of course also like not being at school and not having like the spring open gym and all of that other stuff that we had been doing for the past 4 years was something that I think that it was kind of like I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until I got back into basketball a few years later. So I think I had moved on mentally. So
yeah. So and when you think about that time and you're coaching, but you talk to people all the time, these kids that are coming through today, whether they're in 4th grade, 5th grade, all the way through the high school. Going through these programs, what advice you guys had? You guys had, looking back, really good basketball careers, a lot of great memories. What advice would you give to those kids that are going through it? And two things, just in general, and then those that want to quit. What advice would you give to them?
I'd just say put the work in. That's the most important thing you could really tell someone who wants to reach goals in basketball. And if they want to quit, honestly, if they won't, it just depends on their reasoning. If they don't love the game, go find something else you love to do. Don't waste your other teammates' time and your coach's time if you don't want to be there. It just brings the team down. So go do something else that you can excel at.
Yeah, that's an honest answer. How about you?
I double down on that and say like if it's worth it, then you'd be willing to go through the tough times. If you really have that love for the game, you'd be willing to put in the work to be better. To sacrifice some of the comfort, so that you can grow. So I think that like even with that being said, I think that's like a good filter for people. Is it something you're worth to kind of endure and do for the next, 4 years, for one shot at state championship? Are you willing to put the work in for 3.5 years, So now, like I said, I ran into the ground before I got kind of that question that came up where it was like, oh, okay, are you willing to put the work in for this? And that was what really almost like tested that love. So,
yeah, it's Usain Bolt has a quote. He said something like, I trained 4 years to run 10 seconds.
Yeah. Right.
And it was all worth it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You guys both have that same mentality. So let's transition into following high school. We're in the middle of COVID, so it totally hit us when you guys, it changed everything. But what were your guys' plans? What did you think was going to happen? What in reality happened?
What year did you graduate? Sorry.
2020.
That was your graduate. Oh, wow. Yeah.
The plan was to keep playing basketball somewhere. It was just very hard to see the vision with COVID. No idea what was going on. No, if we were going to be able to play in a year or 2 years. So, I would go out and shoot on outside double rims, just keep working until the opportunity came.
How about you, Handre?
Like I was going to say, and I was a little exhausted after that season because it was a long season and we worked hard, and I think that ultimately it was one of those things where I had expected also to have a clear direction after I graduated, specifically for basketball, to have like, oh, this is an offer from here that's, you can't deny, because they're trying to, pay for all your school or whatever. And that wasn't there, and I think those a big reason because I was actually, for most people, that wasn't there that year because of COVID, and so I think for me, again, I was kind of just close the door, so to speak, in my mind to that, and I actually ended up that's when I got into personal training, just because I was kind of like, that door's closed, so let me try to find another type of mentality.
Well, you both went and played at Sierra College, correct?
Yeah.
And so it was during that time we talked about when Tasha asked about the dream, and both of you had that dream of playing at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
Both of you walk me through your own experience of when that dream started. You started to realize that was not going to be the destination. Mm-hmm. When was that? Let's start with you, D.
Jessica.
Oh my gosh.
That's a great answer.
Expand. She's gonna love it if you just leave it at that.
No, I found my girlfriend and I found a lot more interests. Basketball was always there for me, but during COVID, there were so many things that I never knew were there. Having somebody who's completely different than you and having a girlfriend for one of the first times pretty much opened up a lot of doors and a lot of new things that I actually liked that I never thought I would like. So that opened up stuff, and that also I started liking other things and falling in love with other things. And I finally realized, like, basketball is a game. It's important and I love it and it's fun, but it's not something I truly love.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we all love Jessica. I didn't know that she was the reason why. I'm kidding. I know there's more to it. So was it the end of that dream? Was it emotional for you, or was it over time and it just like one day you woke up, or you're like, oh, this isn't it?
I was extremely excited to move on and try new things. Mm-hmm. I took my same hard work and my mentality and just put it onto something different. During COVID, when we didn't have basketball, it was my first time I actually got honor roll, whatever it's called, for Sierra. Oh. And I got the confidence that I can actually get my degree without playing basketball. And that was the biggest reason why I stopped playing basketball, because I wanted to I knew I wasn't going to compete at the highest level just because it's freakishly crazy nowadays. I know people are small, like Trae Young can work very hard and make it. But like I see Zion Williams and I'm like, he's the same age as me. There is no way I can go on the court with him. So then that's basically where I was like, I had an option to play another year, but I was already 2 years done with my AA and I just wanted to be done with school. So stopped hooping and started hitting the weight room.
How about you, Handre? What was that like going through, and when did you say the dream is I'm moving past it?
Yeah. So, after high school, I didn't touch a basketball for a year. So literally that last game was my last time touching a basketball. I got into personal training, did that, and then some things led me back into basketball. That second year, so that would have been 2021. I went back, and that's when we hooped at Sierra and got after it there. And what really ultimately, I think, did it in for me was I ended up getting hurt again, right? And that was a time where I had a lot of time. I think it was like... I got hurt and then I ended up getting the surgery probably like 3 months later or so. And then that surgery was 6 months on crutches, can't leave the house, at all type of thing. And then another, 6 months for rehab. And that really kind of, again, made me question that love again, and at that time it made me realize that I actually had fallen more in love with the business side of things and building my personal training business and learning more about the coaching and training side of things and the actual playing side of things. I'd grown a new love, so to speak, during that time. So,
for me too, one of the biggest reasons was we took a year off of basketball and then we went to a new program. It's not the same as high school. You grow with the same people from freshman. You guys have the same goal. You have 4 years to work together, hang out, and then try and reach that goal. Once it feels different. Junior college basketball is completely different. There's 20 people at the game, maybe sometimes more, but you really have to grind.
Yeah. And I'd even say that, like, going back to like the whole dream thing, because I think that's like the one instance where I look back and I'm like, at that point, the love of the game is more important than the work you're putting in, because that's what's going to get you through those seasons. I think that's where the balance comes in, where it's not just about the grind and the hustle.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just hustle through it, and just be okay with not enjoying it, so to speak, because at a certain point, like long term, that's not going to pay off. So I think that's like a good thing that I think about too, is like, and like even now I kind of like, I'm like partially regretful for it, because like I wish that I still had a greater love for the game than I do, and I could look back and I'm like, was that really worth it? To push through that, and to say that, okay, it doesn't really matter if I'm not loving this, so
I think that's the thoughts when I look back, and I knew it, like, right, like volleyball and basketball obviously is not like, it's very different. But I was like, I was going to compete. That's just who I am, as hard as I can. And yes, I was better than a lot of people, but I also was like, I'm like, this is not forever. So when you have that in the back of your mind, I'm like, there's no way I could have given it my all versus somebody who's like, this is the only thing I do, You mentioned getting hurt a couple times, and I think that has a big kind of, or maybe like obviously connect to what you do with the training and stuff. So how did you get hurt?
Oh man, initially, so growing up, I had 0 injuries. And then my first injury was freshman year. At the end of freshman year, I broke my ankle, and then that would later set up for what would come literally a week before we started our sophomore year. I dislocated my left knee. I think you were at that tournament. You guys were at that tournament, right? Dislocated my left knee, and that was the big one that first started the cascade of what would come. Because then from that moment on, for the next, like I said, 2.5 years or so, I would have reoccurring dislocations in that knee, and just kind of over and over again. And so that was the one that really set it up for me initially. And then, long story short, I was starting to work with my own style of training, or a guy that created a business with a kind of unorthodox style of training, and I started working with him, and then that fixed my knee for my senior year. And then after that senior year, that's when I kind of realized the power that there is in finding people who know what they're doing. Because those 2.5 years, I had tried everything that was traditional and orthodox and expected, and none of it worked. And so it wasn't until I found something that actually worked that I actually found that, and I kind of put the two together, and I was like, I'd like to do that for other people as well. So that's what led to me actually doing my own training down the road.
Yeah, so I want to bring it back to where you guys are at now, and we'll talk about some of your training. And so here comes some of the dad questions, and just digging in. And we're going to get to your podcast, but so you decide to go to UNR. I have a feeling this has to do with Jessica as well. Piece of it.
Well, actually, it worked out in a great way, because I just wanted to get my degree, and I wanted to get away from Sac State. I just wanted to do something different, move out and try and just grow up a little bit. So it worked out really good, because it's 2 hours away. Family is really big for me, and it's a 2-hour drive, which is nice to stay close. Plus, my brother just had 2 kids, and I wanted to at least see them a couple times a year. And if you go somewhere far, it's hard to do that with plane and then the money to fly and all that stuff. So it kind of just fell right in front of me, and I got lucky.
So it sounds like while you got lucky, I mean, you put a lot of the work in academically once you got to Sierra. And it's a little bit different. Like, there's different reasons why people go to school. It's not like you said, I wanted to go to the school because my friends are there. There's going to be a party. I'm going to be part of this, or I'm going to be part of that. It was more well thought out than that. Is this typically how you go through your decision-making process? Is it that thought out, or does it just feel like that from the outside?
It feels like that from the outside, but it definitely depends on the situation. I mean, to get into the podcast a little bit, it wasn't really thought out, but it was. I always wanted to be like an entrepreneur and do something just on my side, like a side thing. But the way it happened just kind of honestly just fell right in front of me.
All right, we're going to get the podcast in a few minutes. So when we think about now that you're in college and you're coming up on graduation, what is your passion? When you think about what your passion is, what you want to do, have you defined it yet?
Not necessarily, no. I'm very curious, and I like to learn about random stuff, and I'm kind of sitting back waiting to find something that I truly love. But I'm very passionate about the gym. That's something that I care about, and it's a necessity for me.
Yeah, Handre, so for you, you decided to go a different path, and you talked about your injuries. You went into personal training. Tell us a little bit about that decision-making process and how it happened.
Yeah, I think at that time, back then, I knew one thing for sure is that I didn't have any offers, and there was no clear path forward. And so I think it was a combination of that, and then also just wanting to not be stagnant, not take that time in COVID and just not move, not do anything, not grow, there's no challenge, And that's when I kind of also took that opportunity of kind of asking that same question for myself, is like, is there anything that I'm interested in at this time right now? And as I've said multiple times, is at that point I was kind of sick of basketball, so that wasn't an option for me at the moment, you know. But I had fallen in love with being in the gym, so it was kind of a similar thing where I had really started to enjoy actually going and putting the work in and learning from my coach at the time what it actually takes in order to be a good basketball player, to build your body up and do all these things. And so that was just kind of like a bait I got, so to speak. And then I was just like, okay, is there anything to do with this? And I reached out to a few people and I got a mentor and started working with him. So it was kind of just like what can I do next, or what can I do now that's better than doing nothing? Because that was the only other option. So
pretty much anything, but at least you love it.
So I'm fascinated. Is it fair to say that you're an introvert?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know Donovan is. How do you, as an introvert, say, I'm going to go train other people? Because you're engaging with them. You have to have conversations. Oh, yeah. And I don't know, Natasha's sitting here, if you would have known that. Well,
it's funny because of the two, I think he's more introverted than you.
Pointing at Donovan.
So I did, yes. Oh yeah, Donovan. So I don't know. I couldn't quite read yet. I didn't think so. I don't know. Like, you're methodical, but I think it's like, I'm like over here just watching. But I watched, so I went through like your business thing. So I didn't think you're that much of an introvert, but I mean, I only saw on social.
Yeah. So was it uncomfortable for you to come out of your shell and say, I'm going to go find people to work with. Yeah. They're going to be my clients. I'm going to ask them to pay me for a service.
Right. Or even find a mentor. You said you reached out to somebody to...
Yeah. I think that was kind of the key in the beginning, because if I had to go and just do it on my own, then I probably would not have been able to do that unless it took some serious discipline, which I definitely didn't have at the time. But I would say having the mentor definitely helped, because I was working for him at the time. Pretty much what he said is he would take me in and he would give me the clients. He would do the selling and I just needed to train people. And so to begin with, it actually worked out really well because I didn't have to do all those things.
Yeah.
But then over the course of those first 9 months or so, he gradually started to now teach me how to do consultations, how to, sell people, how to do all that stuff. And then gradually I started to learn more and more. I opened up more and more. But on that note, though, still to this day, spending 6 hours with people back to back to back is pretty exhausting. So there has to be a pretty good balance of, and that's something that I need to be disciplined with, is when I'm not working, I need to be doing other things that fill me up, if that makes sense. So, and most of that I would say comes from learning. So I think that was the thing also that really helped me fall in love with it, is the learning aspect of, this is something I can learn. There's like an infinite amount of knowledge here in the training, fitness, health space, and that something is something that, one, you don't need to have other people to do that. You can go and read and do research and all that. And that was something that really filled me up. So I think that's the thing that I really, really fell in love with.
And now you're just you're doing the whole end to end. You get your own clients, do the whole
do it all on my own now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the disciplines you guys learned from, and I always go back to, you guys are athletes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I was never an athlete at you guys' level. I'm not going to claim to be, but the principles of getting up and going to the gym and of eating the right things and everything. How much of the disciplines that you guys learned through your athletic career are now applying to what you're doing in school and what you're doing in your new business? Can you draw a correlation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like I can. It's always in the back of my mind that I have homework I have to get done. So I know I need to do it. And if I get home from class, I can either sit there and watch a game or enjoy myself and do whatever, but it doesn't feel right. I feel like I need to get my stuff done, so then I feel more accomplished and like I'm actually doing something productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think that, we talked about this a little bit too, and going back to the Rocklin program, I think that's what Coach Schiller really prides himself on, almost, is the fact that he wants to create high quality men, and high quality employees, or just high quality people, and I think that it is more than basketball for him, even though he is insanely passionate about basketball. He prides himself on making sure that people show up on time and then work hard and then, and all those things. And if you don't do that, then you're not in the program.
It obviously stays with you guys.
Yeah. I think it definitely stayed with me for sure. And I would say that that was one of those things where, as a high schooler, like you don't want to do those things. You don't want to be uncomfortable. You don't want to do all that. But I think the more that I did it personally, it helped me realize that like as you start to do more of these difficult things, it kind of opens up more for more fun, if that makes sense, you know. So I look back at my high school career. If I had taken it seriously to go to the gym more often or do the right things or do my research, I probably wouldn't have been injured for 2.5 years, you know. But because I neglected those things, I had to get to that route the difficult way, you know. And I think being injured was a lot more hard than me just going to the gym, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize it until afterwards. But
there's a quote that sticks with me, and I can't remember who said it is, but do the hard things so that you can do the things you want.
Yeah.
Just get it out of the way, get it done.
Yeah.
So I want to transition into, you guys have a podcast, and it's DLO and Dre. So two introverts.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah. We golfed at the end of, I think it must have been July or August. I can't remember. It was before you went to school. It was like the week before you went to school. And we were just talking about, I think, just life, just talking about whatever and everything. And I think I had mentioned the fact that I tried doing a podcast like 1.5 years ago, and I made it like 2 episodes in, and I was kind of like, I can't do this anymore. You know?
Was it just you?
Just me. Yeah. I was interviewing people, but it was just me. And I figured that it was something that I really desired to do. And I realized that it would be useful to have someone else to do it with, you know, because not only can you split the load in terms of the editing and the posting and the social media and all that stuff, but it's also more engaging and meaningful when you can just have a conversation with a person, you know, about things instead of just being one person talking, you know, and like almost like preaching, you know. Yeah. So I realized that, and I was like, you know, and me and Dee have always had really good conversations. You know, we're both introverts, which not that extroverts aren't deep, but we're both deep thinkers, you know, and so we can go pretty deep on things. And it was just a matter of, I know you were looking for something too, and it was just a matter of like, oh, I'm looking for this, he's looking for this, and it just came together. So
Donovan, how did you get talked into doing the podcast, or was it just simple? Like, walk us through your part.
It was interesting for me because I remember we were golfing and we were just talking about life, and he asked me like, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? And we're just talking, hitting the golf balls, having a good time. And I want to be an entrepreneur, and I've been saying that a lot, and I haven't taken a step forward or really done much before the podcast. And I saw him doing his personal training, and it's motivating, and I see everyone else doing stuff, and I was like, I want to try to do something. So I think a podcast, I mean, it's all on your own for the most part, and whoever you're working with. And I saw you guys do it, and I remember you just said, I want to do this, see what happens, and you started doing everything, and you just learn
as you go. Yeah. That's it. And I see it's so funny as you talk, I'm like, oh, I can see like I wasn't really sure it like started. So were you both into podcasts? Like, do you listen to, had you listened to podcasts? I know it's been obviously pretty, but there's like millions of podcasts now, and it's really cotton on, but is that a form that you two are like, do you like that, or is it different?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's what I mainly listen to sometimes. I went through a phase of just music when I worked out, and it got boring. It ran its course. So now it's just podcasts because I want to learn and grow a little bit. I think that was actually my preferred way of learning. And I think it still is, because I remember my first actual job outside of the under the table stuff at Hardwood. My first actual job was at a racket club. I would wash the tennis courts, you know, with the power washers. And at that job, I was like, I need to listen to something, and I had little old rackety earbuds, you know. And I started listening to a finance podcast, and I was a sophomore year of high school. And I think ever since then, I was like, I like doing it this way instead, you know, where it's like I can do something still with my hands and engage and do something, but also be listening to something, you know. I think it was just a really well platform for learning for me. So, and I mean, still to this day, I love learning through podcasts. I don't think I've ever stopped. So I used to laugh because I used to think like, okay, before talk radio, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like who listens to other people talk? I'm like, that's for old people, to be honest. And now I'm just like, oh yeah, it's better. Like music, I would rather hear something that's productive. But they do say that there's like, I've been reading up on podcast statistics like ever since we started, and there's so many that really just one episode, right? Get on the platform and then they're out. And so it's just, you just keep going, and all of a sudden, I mean, we're at like 50 now, which I didn't, expect either. So,
and no one knows how much work goes into it. So the amount of work that you guys are putting into it, was it what you expected? Is it easier? Is it more?
Right now it's easier just because we're not taking it too deep at the moment. We're just trying to learn from what we're doing and seeing what people like and seeing how our views are doing and how the responses are going. So it's easy and it's hard because we're actually in a pivot. We're trying to decide if it's a podcast on what we want to motivate people and talk about health and mental health, physical and mental health, or if we're going to start reacting to videos about physical and mental health, or we're just trying to find what works. Yeah. So it's difficult.
Yeah. It is difficult. And so my advice to you would be just to keep going because let me ask you this. What's the ultimate goal? When we talk about a year from now with the podcast, where do you guys want to be with the podcast? Where do you envision?
I'd say for me, like, kind of like how I was saying, I've built my in-person business, and I think I am more trying to develop an online presence in terms of, just as a platform primarily, although it does come back to the business because it would be something that is beneficial for the business. And then also I think something that I know it's meaningful for DLO. I know DLO's looking for something to do next. And so it would be fun to have something where it's like, okay, it's beneficial for both of us, and it's something that's fun. It's easy. It's all those things. And so I think it's, or I should say it's simple. It's not easy. It's simple for the most part. Right. And, it's something that we can scale and ultimately something that we can both impact people, and create some meaning in other people's lives too.
So my goal, like I said earlier, is to be an entrepreneur. So I think starting with the podcast, see how we can grow this. And eventually the goal is if we have an audience, just have our link to our own stuff underneath or have a way to combine them. Yeah. So the main thing is the podcast. And if we get viewers, people who listen, they can see the stuff on the side and be like, they're saying some educated stuff. Let me see what this is about. And then 2 businesses in one.
What kind of listeners do you guys want? Like who's... your podcast won't be for everybody. We know our podcast is not for everybody. And those that you really resonate, like I know certain people are going to be like, not about it. So I'm like, that's fine. Like, I would rather have somebody listening that's like, me, I'm much better to deep conversation than like small talk, So I'm like, if you're like, come for the deep conversations, but what's like ideal listener for you guys? Like, who do you hope is listening to the pod?
Well, I don't think we've even talked about it really, I think.
We haven't talked about it, but for me, the more inexperienced people that just don't know the knowledge about lifting and just taking care of yourself, there's so many different things out there. And I mean, we're both healthy and we put the work in, so we know a little bit about what we're talking about. Yeah. So I think that, and then there's people who need motivation. Everything we talk about revolves around mental and physical health. So just people who want to better themselves and take the next step and get healthy.
Yeah, don't get me started on the physical exercise side of things. I'll go down a really big rabbit hole there. But I agree. If we can get at least one person working out consistently, and doing any type of resistance training or cardio, then I will be very happy with what we've done. So
I'm gonna challenge you guys both just a little bit, and they're fantastic answers, and I could tell they're really thought out. And as Natasha and I have gone through and we've done the podcast, we listen to podcasts about how you grow your podcast. We do a lot of reading on it, and there's this thought that, when you say it's a hobby or we're taking it serious but not taking it serious, there's a stage where you have to say, I'm going to go make $5 million and I'm going to have 10 million listeners. And you have to believe the same way you believed you had state championship. If these microphones are off, is that what you got is in the back of your head when you're going to sleep? You're like, I'm going to go make $1 million on this podcast. Is that thought there?
I think the podcast is a door that's going to open to where I want to be with making millions of dollars. I think this is something that we might fail on, we might have super success, but we learn from both of those.
Yeah, I think it's that, and it's also like just like basketball is. It's a good place for growth. I think it's a good place for an indicator for growth too. Because I'm sure like you guys have a whole different. Well, I'd say at least I know you guys probably hope that episode 50 would be better than episode 1,
Oh, and is. Listen back.
You know what I mean?
Listen back. It gets better, boys.
And so I think that's like it's just a good one of those other good areas, just like the gym is, where you can see tangible growth. And I think it goes back to the whole thing of growing up. If you're not getting better, I feel like it's really difficult. And then financially speaking, I think it would be great. I think it would. I agree with him what he's saying. I think it's really just an opportunity thing. I think it'll open up more doors. And I think that's what it's all about for me. Yeah.
Well, I'm incredibly proud of both of you for a variety of reasons, just in sitting here talking to you guys. But just to take the step outside of a comfort zone and do something that, and not listen to any of the noise of, if you look at the statistics, you look at what people are going to say, versus I'm just going to go do this and see what door it's opening is incredibly insightful to say, let me figure this out. So incredibly proud of you. And then just the way you guys have, talked today and held yourself together and where you've come from, and incredibly proud of both of you. And I think you guys have something. I think you just, like you said, keep going down that path and how you refine it, how you take it to the next level, how you learn how to get one more listener, how you learn how to monetize it. And then to your point, if just like the dream of basketball, in 6 months, if this wasn't the dream, maybe it turns into a different, you never know what it's going to turn into, who you're going to meet, the connections that you're going to have, and what opportunity it opens. So I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, we're still pivoting after a year, and each guest and episode gives us this, different idea. And I think that's what it's about, is just figuring it out as you go. We interview a lot of people where we're always like, hey, tell us the story. Like, how did your business start? And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're doing it right now. Like, I'm going to laugh when I'm like, yeah, I used to write in whiteboard marker, like, and then someday it'll be in lights. But I realized that I'm like, oh, this is the journey, right? Like, you look back, like, how did you get your first customer, right? What was it like, your first episode, things like that. And so I think, 10 years from now, I'm like, oh yeah, that was, funny how you start, but you have to start somewhere.
I remember we met a couple weeks before I left, and it stuck with me. I remember we were talking, and Handre said, why can't we be millionaires by 20? Like, what's the reason why we cannot do something that we put our minds to? There's no reason for us not to unless we're lazy.
Unless you don't try.
Yeah.
That's the one guarantee, is if you don't try, we won't make it.
Yeah, I love it. So these hours go by so incredibly fast. I have one or two more questions, and Natasha might have a couple as well. Where do I see both of you in 5 years? Who are you two in 5 years? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. In 5 years, I want to have experience in one main job, but I want at least 2 to 3 side things. Maybe, hopefully the goal, 5 years to have 2 things that I can try to grow super big, but eventually lead to that one thing, and then I can leave that main job, focus on my thing, whoever I collab with, and then take that huge.
What about you, Handre? 5 years.
I think about it probably too much. But I would say, it's a tough one. I'd say ideally, the word I'd use is financially independent, regardless of how you get there, or what the path is. And then I would say, honestly, that's the biggest one, because everything else ripples from that. So I would say the financial independence would be a big one. So
good. Well, as you guys are going towards that 5 years, a piece of dad advice I'm going to give you is enjoy the journey. Because where you guys, to Natasha's point, what you're doing right now, when you look back, this is going to be the fun part. When you look back at your high school career, you remember the practices and being late and someone getting in trouble, having to run lines and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, that was actually fun. When you think back, you can laugh at it. This is part of the journey. So enjoy it while you guys are focused in on your destination.
Agreed. I always ask the question of like, what would you tell your 30-year-old self? And obviously neither of you are there yet. So it's kind of same concept, but you're obviously going through the high school thing, going through COVID, you're in this time in life, you're figuring it out, right? How are you different, would you say, like, than you were, maybe, 5 years ago? Like, what do you feel different now? Like you're either maturing or whatever it is, but what's kind of something big that maybe is different from you 5 years ago? Big question.
Yeah, it's a big question to think about. I'm honestly, I wouldn't say completely different, but you can ask Handre, even my dad. It's funny, going to Thanksgiving, everyone's like, you're in a Gap shirt and you're eating salad. Like, what's happening?
Jessica.
Oh my gosh, I'm using that quote for social. You're in a Gap shirt and you're eating salad. Sorry, one sec. So what's different? The things you cared about are different now, or why does that make you different?
I couldn't pinpoint anything. I think it's just, honestly, COVID changed my life. It changed a lot of people's lives, but I just found new interests and new things to put my energy towards. And I think what you put out is what you get. So if you put in just good attitudes, you're a positive person, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, and I'll speak from as his father, just watching you mature and you be more inner looking. Like you talked about eating a salad. It's not the fact of eating a salad, it's the fact of so against trying anything new 5 years ago to now being open to at least trying new experiences. Is that fair?
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, we would talk about it. I did not want to bench. I remember you said it's very important and get your shot. I was like, why would I do that? I don't need to do that. It's stupid. And then 3 months later, it's my favorite thing I do. It's something that I take super serious. So it's just trying to grow and learn from other people and actually active listen to them.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
I would say, I hope that I'm different from where I was 5 years ago. And I'd probably say just being more focused on like the inputs, and focus more on, I guess it's the journey. It really that's what it comes down to, being more focused on the day-to-day things of, doing something we love every day, but not wanting the results like today. So that would be a good way is kind of just the delayed gratification side of things. Probably that's the biggest thing. I would say that's different. And that's something I wish I'd learned earlier again, because otherwise in high school, Handre, basketball was important. And if he had learned that, then he would have spent more time in the gym earlier enough. And so, just things like that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's just the learning to love the discipline, the not wanting the results right away, the learning to love the process and the journey. So
again, it's a maturity and evolution.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask one last question. You can't say me, Donovan, but for both of you, who's your inspiration?
Oh, good one.
I have a lot of them, so it's hard to pinpoint one. Why can't I say you?
You can say him. You can say him. I was going to force it out a little bit, so just go.
Not even that it's forced. I would probably say you just because you're super positive and everything that goes bad, there's always another way to say, hey, look at it like this. You're going to learn from it and you can do it whatever you want. You put your mind to it, and you just taught us that at a young age. So.
All right, I'll take it. I love you.
That's a good one.
How about you, Handre?
I don't know if you guys know who Jordan Peterson is.
I do.
But he'll be my inspiration for sure.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He has some good podcast episodes.
He does. Yeah.
Why you like him so much? Why does he inspire you?
He values thinking, to put it simply, and he really emphasizes the importance of learning how to think and think deeply, and the fact that it's more than just to have a better life or have a nicer life, but it's something that will completely transform your atmosphere and your environment and who you're around. And so it's more than just yourself is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah.
It's very true. I don't know if you've heard, but listening to an episode, I was like, it literally makes you, I'm like, oh, I don't think open enough. Or in a way, I'm like, it just makes you realize, like, very narrow-minded. So I was like, man, I need to open it up a little bit. So very helpful. It's a good call out.
Well, this has been a great hour.
Guys.
I appreciate you guys coming on the podcast. Yeah. So DLO and Dre, I want all of our listeners to listen to your show. This is our first collab.
Well, link in everything. I've been listening. I still have some episodes to catch up on, but you guys are doing a fantastic job. Of course, we're rooting for you. Thank you so much for being open and sharing. And I know it's a conversation you don't always have, so it was really good to get to know you and get a little bit more insight. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It means a lot.